Episode 9, titled The Marshal, kicked off Season 2 of The Mandalorian, and wow, what an incredible start to the season. This review and breakdown is going to contain spoilers, so you have been warned. Now, this episode begins on a world unknown to us for now, with Din Djarin walking along with the child at night. It's the same location we saw in the trailers with all of that art in the walls and all those street lights. It's dark, dim, and gritty. And you can also see these tiny little red eyes peering out from the darkness, watching Din and the child as they walk around. Personally, I loved how bizarre and strange that was, and I loved how it paid off in the end. So Din ends up going to that location where the Gamorrean fights are occurring, and this is where Gor Koresh is, another person we also saw in the trailers. The Mandalorian ends up taking a seat next to Koresh, and they watch the two Gamorreans go at it. And to be honest, I never thought I would need to see Gamorreans fighting to the death with axes, but I did need it. And now I am a happier person. It was a very cool way to utilize those aliens in a brand new way, and the person that seems to be nailing that is Jon Favreau, so thank you. So while the fight is going on, Din and Koresh have an exchange about Gor's information regarding a Mandalorian, but in a twist, which isn't a twist because we all saw this in the trailer, Gor has his guards draw their blasters on Din in hopes to attain his Beskar armor. As Gor put it, he harvests the armor, but as expected, the Mando takes charge and dominates the situation, utilizing his whispering birds to take out all of the guards and what seemed to be a vibroblade for the rest of the close combat that he had to endure. Gor Koresh, who was terrified, ran away from the brutality as well, but then the Mandalorian caught right up with him and strung him upside down to a streetlight. Din ends up forcing Gor to give him the information that he seeks, and we find out that this other Mandalorian that Gor speaks of is located on Tatooine, in a place called Mos Pelgo. With the information he needed attained, Din shoots out the light post that Gor was hanging from, which was apparently keeping those red-eyed aliens at bay, and then they all slowly creeped in on Gor, and then the scene cuts to black as Gor was screaming. And I thought that was just incredible. It's so vague what those are, but terrifying. So when we arrive back on Tatooine, we meet a familiar face, Peli Motto. And this time around, we can tell that the Mando isn't too worried about those little pit droids fixing his ship. He's warmed up to it finally. And it was pretty humorous to see Peli's reaction to the child. All in all, it was just nice to have a little callback to Season 1. And Peli Motto, who now owns R5-D4, ends up giving the Mando information about where he can find Mos Pelgo. With that said, he can't just fly in there, so Din ends up using the same speeder bike he borrowed last time, and he sets off for Mos Pelgo with the child. When Din arrives in Mos Pelgo, he enters a cantina and asks about the Mandalorian he has heard about, the person that looks like him, and the bartender says that he's looking for the Marshal, who is actually already there watching this entire exchange happen. Now when we see this person, we immediately know that that's Boba Fett's armor, and who's actually under it is an individual named Cobb Vanth. He acquired the armor after Boba Fett's death, and if you want to learn more about Cobb Vanth, he was introduced in the Aftermath trilogy, which I did not really like that much. This leads to a bit of a quarrel between the Mando and Cobb because only Mandalorians can wear Mandalorian armor, and the Mandalorian demands the steel back. And while a shootout almost occurs, the entire structure and surrounding area begins to shake ruthlessly because a gigantic crate dragon is making its way through the town, eventually popping out of the sands and eating a helpless bantha. It was insane. Now, the situation turns into an opportunity for Cobb Vanth and the Mandalorian. Cobb wants help to destroy the dragon, and in exchange, he will give back the Mandalorian armor. And now that they've teamed up, they end up traversing the desert to where the dragon lives. And what's extremely awesome is that it's revealed that Cobb Vanth's speeder is made out of Anakin Skywalker's pod racing engine. It's immediately noticeable and very appreciated. And while they're traveling around, Cobb tells the Mando his story of being at a cantina way back when the second Death Star was destroyed, and we see this actually occur via flashback, with the actual Death Star explosion being projected via hologram. It was really incredible as a super old fan like myself to see that in this new way, and it makes me curious if they actually used the footage from Return of the Jedi or if it was a complete recreation just for this one episode. Either way, after the explosion of the Death Star, rather than experiencing freedom, this syndicate called the Red Key Raiders ends up enslaving everyone in Mos Pelgo. There is a deadly shootout in the cantina, and Cobb barely escapes with his life. However, he was lucky enough to grab a Camtona full of crystals, which aided him in his survival when he was picked up by Jawas. He ended up trading the crystals he stole from the Red Key Raiders for the Mandalorian armor, which was inside of the Sandcrawler. Eventually, the Mando and Cobb meet a band of Tusken Raiders, who also want to get rid of the Krayt Dragon, but in order for this to be successful, the town and the Tuskens have to team up, which is a bit of an issue in the first place because there's some history between Mos Pelgo and these Tusken Raiders. Either way, the Mandalorian is the one to convince the people that they can trust and work together with the Tusken Raiders because they promise to never attack the town again as long as the town doesn't go after them. I think that's fair. And then from here, everyone loads up charges onto Banthas and travels back to where that enormous Krayt Dragon lives, and they all try to destroy it. This entire sequence is incredible because we see just how difficult and insane it is to try to kill a Krayt Dragon. The only time we've even seen one of these in live action was just a skeleton in A New Hope. So this is just amazing to see. And after failing to kill this dragon, Din pulls what I'm going to call a Kylo Ren, because Kylo Ren did something a lot like this in the Age of Resistance comic. Din uses himself as bait along with a bantha strapped to the nines with charges so that the dragon will eat them, and it does. But then we hear the ground rumbling and the dragon explodes back out of the ground, and it's being electrocuted with Din's rifle from the inside out, and then Din flies out, hitting the charges, and it explodes from the inside out. Amazing. Now, the town and the Tuskens can live in peace, and Cobb hands over the Mandalorian armor as he promised to the Mandalorian. And I like that at the end, the Tuskens are harvesting all of the Krayt Dragon. It's insanity, just blood and guts everywhere. And it's also what was promised to them as well, but it's just funny to watch them going at it and hacking away. And I also chuckled at the giant piece of meat on Din's speeder. I don't know why, it just looked funny to me. And as this episode closes out, we see the famous twin suns in the distance as Din speeds away. But then the show pulls out to reveal an onlooker, who then turns around revealing that it's Temuera Morrison, who is playing Captain Rex. So my guess, Ahsoka isn't too far behind. I think this episode was perfect, and I say that without hyperbole. This was the best way to kick off season 2, and I cannot wait for chapter 10 next week. I feel like it's inevitable that next week's episode must lead into something with Captain Rex and Ahsoka, but I don't want to give my hopes up yet. So, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and share it around. Thank you for sticking around with me for my ramblings for about 8 minutes here, and may the Force be with you. AT-AT is signing off.